previously been sent to the audit committee. Jennifer?
Absolutely, and thank you very much, guys. I hope everyone is home and safe and well. And I definitely would like to, take a moment to thank Jeff and Bob for their assistance this year in getting confirmation responses. We've had a great response this year, and they were certainly part of it. Also to Sue for helping organize getting all the audit documents in order. As we just we'll go through the financial statements quickly. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to chime in. We'll start right at the top on page 1, which is the page that's on our letterhead. It is the independent auditor's report. It's essentially the piece that we're issuing. It'll say in here that because you guys are a governmental entity, you're subject to 2 different types of auditing standards. You're subject to generally accepted auditing standards as well as generally accepted government auditing standards. So this letter just identifies that, as well as your responsibility as the auditee, ours as the auditor, and ultimately concludes with the opinion, which is the culmination of this, and which it identifies that you guys received a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion, which is essentially the A of the opinion world. So all is well there. That's kind of that is the big takeaway from tonight's presentation, that everything is in order. Moving right along, so then the next couple pages of the audit, starting on page 3, is what we call the management discussion and analysis. And it just provides some key, financial highlights, through the year, changes from year to year, revenue and expenditure differences, overall net position increases. And then it kind of identifies it, on page 3, just kind of, verbally. And then there's some different presentations in tables and in graphs on some of the subsequent pages. So as we'll get to, some of the changes in a couple of the other schedules down the road. But that's essentially what these pages are, just kind of brief financial highlights. Okay, so then getting to, so the first statement is obviously statement number 1 or schedule number 1. I'm actually going to skip to statement number 3 or schedule number 3, which is on page 9, I believe. Yes, page 9. So in the governmental world, there are both what we call fund statements and entity-wide statements. For your purposes, because you guys don't have multiple funds and you don't have some various other things, like you don't have fixed assets and long-term debt, the schedules are exactly the same. But for the town, for instance, they would have multiple funds and then some additional schedules that convert them to entity-wide. I'm just kind of giving a little bit more background, but so some of these schedules, they may look a little bit repetitive, and that's just because you don't have these additional factors. So Schedule 3 is your balance sheet, and it's basically just identifying, that you have, some significant cash, a little bit of prepaid, which is just there was a service, I believe that you guys paid for this year for the Center for Government Research, which it would span the 2 fiscal years, so part of it was considered prepaid. There's, a little bit in accounts payable at year end, some accrued expenses, I think namely, our audit fee. And then this, due to other governments, which is the kind of the one thing on here I want to point out, is because it's a little bit unique, and we don't anticipate it next year, presumably, that in the termination of Pollock, there were some sales tax and mortgage tax recaptures. The sales tax was recaptured and then ultimately remitted to New York State. The mortgage tax was recaptured as well. It just hasn't been remitted yet to Orange County. We're just waiting on guidance from them, as to where that needs to go. So that's why that's just sitting out here as an additional liability, showing that that's due to be paid back to Orange County. Let's go to the next schedule, Schedule 4. So this is the statement of revenues, expenditures, and change in fund balance. In the private industry world, this would be, the profit and loss statement. And just identifies the various sources of revenues as well as expenditures. As you can see, the fee revenue is the major source of revenue. This was obviously a very busy year, and as such, there were a lot of associated fees that were collected. And then on the expenditure side, generally really normal operating stuff, a little bit, different. The advertising was basically the publication. There was, more meetings, some additional expense there. There was need for the website to be kind of created and revamped, so there's some additional expense there. And then at that time, there was, the CEO was in place, so there was some additional expense there. So all told, the revenues exceeded expenditures last year to the tune of about $95,000, which is good. So that means there was an operating surplus. And that all, flows directly to your fund balance, leaving you a fund balance position of $684,912. So let's see. So schedule.
Jen?
Yes, go right ahead.
Maybe just stop a moment and see if anyone on the audit committee has a question on what you've covered so
Oh,
far.
absolutely. No, absolutely. Any questions?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah, like I said, anytime, feel free to, interrupt me or, we can address them at the end. Schedule 6, nothing essentially real, exciting to talk about. This is just, or Schedule 5 rather. It's the statement of cash flows. It just traces our, our cash position at the beginning of the year and identifies all the changes that occurred during the year and then where our cash ended at the end of the year. Schedule 6 is kind of one of those entity-wide statements, if you will, that just kind of says, hey, your net change in fund balance was, 94,881. If you had additional, items that related to, additional fixed assets and, debt and that sort of thing would be represented here, but there's nothing to report. So then kind of now flipping back a little bit to Schedule 1, which is the statement of net position. So this would be, again, if all these additional things were included, but you guys don't have them, this is where they would be represented. So this is essentially the exact same thing as your balance sheet. It just shows, you have some cash, some prepaid, limited current liabilities, and that you end in a positive, unrestricted net position of almost $685,000.
Which page are you on?
That would be page 7 or Schedule 1.
Okay.
So it's really the same essentially as Schedule 3. It has to be kind of shown in 2 separate schedules just according to the government auditing standards. But it's the same information. And then, essentially the same thing with Schedule 2. It's just a little bit, it's a different recapitulation of the revenues and the expenditures. Just showing, the different sources and then that you ended in a operating surplus of almost $95,000. Okay, so Schedule 7, this is actually the one that is, so this year was most exciting to me, because at least since I've been doing it for, the past 10 years or so, we've never had this, so we had full compliance from every project this year, to the confirmation project, to a process, which is fantastic. The only kind of outlier here is Pollock. We threw it on here for presentation purposes, essentially saying, that the project terminated, just so that the reader knows from year to year why they're now off. But annually, for just so you guys know, we send out these confirmations to the different projects to identify, have them tell us what their pilot arrangement is, and then to identify some sort of data, census data about the jobs that they were anticipating creating, what they've actually created, and then if they've created makes sense. And, we've kind of had lackluster responses in current year or in prior years, and this year we had, full compliance across the board, which is wonderful. And again, that's, in part due to Jeff and Bob reaching out to these guys and, putting the pressure on, so I thank you very much. Okay, after that, then we just hit the notes. There's some of this is just kind of general information about the IGA, who you are, the makeup of your board. Again, the difference between government-wide and fund financial statements, which we kind of were talking about. There's no real notes in here that I'm just looking to see if there's anything. Just to point out notes, on page, it's letter F, it's on the bottom of page 17. It just identifies your cash, that you have this $712,000 in cash, and that the entire balance is covered by FDIC insurance or by collateral, which is great, so that, you're required to do so as a government, but it just identifies that, we notated both of those items. So then, through the rest of the notes, there's not much going on. At the very end, we evaluate subsequent events to the date of our issue, which was dated this time last week, March 16th. There was nothing of any financial nature that needed disclosing. Last year, the only reason I'm mentioning is because last year we had a note in here about Pollock because they did terminate after the year end, but before we were issuing, so that had to be identified. And then the last piece is there's an internal control letter. So this is required by the government auditing standards piece. It requires us to identify and evaluate internal controls. And it just in here, we identified one area where we saw that there may be a weakness of the segregation of duties. Part and parcel to any small organization, that comment is going to be there. And it is something that I just want to point out that at the time when I issued this to Jeff, we had not, just due to the timing of it, we just didn't have a response yet back from management. We did subsequently get one today, which we're evaluating, and ultimately in the final version of this, we will include a notation of management's response before this gets submitted to the ABO, just so that comment wouldn't be in there about the management not issuing a comment before the report was issued. So that's basically, the financial statements, quickly, but if you guys have any questions, we're more than happy to answer them.
Jen?
Yes, go ahead,
Yeah.
Matt.
Jen, Matt Stoddard. So,
Yeah.
how are you? And thank you for sitting with us this evening. Jen, so the audit report seems to be pretty well in place. It's up to snuff, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Now, my question is there anything that we can do as the audit committee to make it better?
That's interesting. The general operating, no. I mean, we're doing good. Sue's, very diligent about getting the information to us timely, and, it's very precise and accurate when I get it. Obviously, this limited segregation of duties piece is something, you guys are taking action on. There's a lot of mitigating factors in place. We just have to kind of evaluate them a little bit further and, include them into the report itself. But otherwise, no, nothing offhand comes to mind. I think you guys are doing a great job. Of course.
Other questions from the committee?
Anything else?
Yeah, this is Don Berger, Jennifer. Just, I'm new at this, so bear with me.
Sure. Oh, no problem.
On Schedule 7, the money, the supplemental information straight lease,
Yeah.
are those the monies that year that were actually paid to the county, local, and school districts?
Correct. So the top part of it, where in the real property tax section, that is the amount that these various projects would have paid at full assessed value. And then the piece right under it, where the pilot, that's the piece that was actually paid under the pilot arrangement. So yes, so that second piece under the pilot piece is what was actually paid. So that's a good question.
Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Other questions?
Hi, it's Randy. Are we waiting for the audit committee to finish asking questions, or are we allowed to ask questions now?
No, I would say ask them now, Randy.
Okay. So I've never looked at an audit before, to be quite honest.
Sure.
So if now is the time to ask general questions, or if I should contact you separately to do that?
No, actually, we can try them now, but I mean, that's up to you. Then if they kind of get, if they're getting too granular or whatever, we can certainly touch base offline.
Okay. What on page 9, what does due to other governments?
Okay, so like I said, that issue was a little bit different. It's something that, at least since I've been working with you guys, we haven't had. So that's basically, it's a liability that's due to another government. Could be due to, in this case, it's actually due back to Orange County. There was a project that had terminated, and at the beginning part of last year, and because part of the termination agreement was that they had to give back any of there was a sales tax piece and a mortgage tax piece. So they had to pay that back to the IDA, and then ultimately the IDA would remit those payments back to the various sources. So there was a sales tax piece that went back to New York State. And then there's a mortgage tax piece that's going to go back to Orange County. And that's what that due to government is, that $20,000 plus. Just Orange County hasn't given us guidance yet exactly, who to send it to and where and that sort of thing. So that's just sitting there as a liability that's due back to Orange County at some point. Would be guidance.
On page 10, the advertising line, that's our special, our public notices in the paper, is that what that is?
Correct, exactly, yeah.
Okay, and then consulting would be?
The consulting was the amount paid to the CEO at the time for the CEO in place last year.
And then data management?
Data management was I think it's called the Center for Government Research. It was some kind of like hosting fees that's being paid. And I think ultimately $3,000 was paid. Yeah, and then part of it was for last year and part of it's for 20.
Okay, and membership too?
And I'm sorry?
Membership is?
Membership, there was I don't remember the exact end, there was just a membership fee to some kind of, and that one I may have to get back to on the exact details, but it was, I think like some kind of government research thing as well.
Okay, and then professional services would be our attorney?
Yep, it's the attorney, it's us as the auditors, and the amount paid to sue.
Okay. Jeff, at a future meeting, I'd like to discuss what we're paying for the website and maybe make another decision.
Sounds good to me, Randy.
Okay. Sorry, I think I only have one or two other questions. If we're
No, that's
fine.
No worries.
On page 16, there is a description of general fund. General fund and unassigned, are they the same thing when it says unassigned on a schedule?
Yeah, so a larger governmental entity would have multiple funds. Like, so for the town of Montgomery, for instance, they have the general fund, they actually they have two general funds, there's a highway fund, a water sewer. You guys only have the one fund, so that's considered the general fund. The fund balance, then within each fund, there's different categorizations of your fund balance. So the unassigned, there's I think 5 ultimate various categories, but all of your fund balance, at least for right now, is considered unassigned. I don't know if that answers your question. No, not necessarily. No, the fund is just kind of like the operating entity of the IDA, and then the unassigned is the type of fund balance.
Okay. Page 18, furnishings and equipment, $735. What is that?
Yes, I guess at some point there was a computer. It was years ago. I don't honestly know, but it's fully depreciated. I think it was a computer bought for Sue, just to banking and that kind of stuff. But like I said, I'm not even sure. But because it's fully depreciated, it doesn't show on your books at all. This is basically just showing that at some point, years and years ago, we had a computer.
Okay. One answer, one question was already answered. We did complete it. And then my last couple questions are, in your significant deficiencies identified that are not considered to be material weaknesses, and then your recommendation that we have limited resources and personnel available. I just would like to touch on that again as we go forward. I think we're definitely trying to work at that, and that's something to make sure that we are improving on all the time. And then as far as the financial statements and that being that was the real concern, right? The lack of segregation of duties. The main issue with that would have been incorrect financial statements.
Not necessarily. It's just no, and that's a really good point. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that there is something. There's a piece of the puzzle that may be in place that there's where additional controls can be put in place, or they can be tightened or enhanced. That would just increase operating effectiveness. It definitely does not mean that there might, that there. I mean, ultimately, it means that there could have been an issue with the financial statements, but does not mean that in your case at all. That's why we use these different auditing standards, and then we ultimately, the opinion we issue, the clean opinion, identifies that there was no issues on the financial statement side.
Right, but that's the main concern, is that that would be the effect
Yeah,
of how.
exactly, right, exactly, yeah, because there could be, there's appropriation, or, there could be, we don't, think that there is, but there's the opportunity for it.
Alright, Matt, I would definitely like to work on that pretty diligently with you going forward. And then my last question is, who typed up the management response letter back to Nugent and Hausler? Stu?
I'm not sure. I received a draft today. I'm not sure where it came from, but we can get it from any sort. I'm not sure. Jeff, do you have more info on that?
Yes, I worked with our counsel on that, Randy,
Okay.
and I reviewed it and, passed it on to Jen.
Yeah, we got it today, and like I said, just kind of the timing of it, I'm gonna take a look at it, and then we will insert additional language on this very last page where, it kind of just goes in there for right now, that the management has not completed a response. That's just kind of the standard piece until we actually get a response. But now that we got it, we'll incorporate the response into the final issue.
Okay, those are all my questions for the auditing.
Okay, great. Yeah, if you have anything else, please feel free to reach out to me directly.
Okay.
Jennifer, I have one more comment to make. This is Don Berger, I'm sorry. Jeff, maybe you could help me out with this one on the letter you sent to Nugent and Hustler today. It talks about the lack of staffing. Could you catch us up on that?
I think, Jen would be able to, discuss where she sees, because we're such a small entity, it may not be possible for us to have all the staff that would provide total control at the auditor level.
Right, exactly, right, because we don't, it's just from an auditing perspective, we want the person, having custody of the assets to be different from the person who has, authorization to use the assets, and to the person that does record keeping. A lot of times, it ends up being the same person, the treasurer might be also the person that signs the checks, and prepares reconciliations. It's just, without the different personnel in place, it's hard to do, even though you guys have a lot of, controls or mitigating factors in place. It's just sometimes without the additional people, people in the appropriate roles, it's hard to eliminate the comment altogether.
And Don,
What you're actually, the comment here is referring to the IDA itself, that the IDA has a lack of staffing.
yeah,
Right, exactly.
that's correct.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. It's kind of a strange one. Okay, but I understand now. Thank you.
Don, I think we might be able to better address it once we have an executive director again.
Yeah, I think you're right. Very good, Jeff. Thank you.
All right, Ed Williams speaking. After reviewing the audit quite thoroughly, I make a motion that we approve the audit as presented.
And Ed, would that include, the responses incorporated from our letter to Nugent and Hausler on the internal control measures?
Yes, it could.
Very good.
If I may, Randy, before we vote on that?
Yeah, I'll call for more, input. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Is that Don Berger?
Montgomery, yeah.
You're not able to second, Don, since you're
Yeah,
not on
that's
the
right. I'm
committee,
sorry.
so it would need to be Matt or Randy.
I'll second it. That's Matt Stoddard.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the floor for the audit committee. Other comments, questions, Randy?
I just have one comment, and it's a little bit nitpicky, but I do think, if we're being told that we have a lack of staffing, and, that could be an oversight issue, in our response back to the auditing committee, I think there's 3 pretty glaring typos that I can see in this, the copy of the letter that I have. I don't know if it's been, looked over and proofread after that, because it doesn't look like the final copy, but if we can just make sure that all of that is correct, because I think we can't really stand behind the fact that we're fully staffed and confident when we're not even proofreading the letters in defense of that.
That comment noted. Anything else, Randy?
No.
I might just clarify a couple of points on the amount due to other governments. That was the last part of the recapture for Pollux Talix. I'm not sure if that was clear in our discussion that we had over the last few minutes. And as Jen mentioned, that normally we wouldn't have a carryover like that, but we've been unable to determine where that money needs to go with Orange County. They've been, I believe, Bob, it's safe to say, non-responsive or unclear on where we need to send that money.
Yes, hi, it's Bob McLaughlin. As we talked about at the last meeting, that was on March 10th, I believe, I reached out to Orange County Clerk again after that meeting on that Thursday, the 12th. I was supposed to get a call back, and then shortly thereafter that, it seemed like the whole world blew up. So I would hope to follow up with them sometime when the world is somewhat back to normal. As the board knows, or most members of the board know, the motor recording tax gets split between the county, various towns, and the state of New York. My inquiry is really just to ask Orange County how they want this payment to be made. I was hoping for the simple send it to us and we'll deal with it. But we really haven't received anything. So hopefully when they're back up and running and responsive in the next month or two, we'll be able to disperse those funds.
Thank you, Bob. And also, Bob, do you recall the association that's appropriate for IDA's membership that would have entailed?
I believe that's the EDC that you're a member of, that we talked about at the last, at the board training on the 10th.
Okay.
They were having a session in April that I think many of the members wanted to go. I'm sure that's all been canceled. But that's the only thing that would come to mind.
Yeah, that sounds.
And I know that your former executive director attended the January meeting in 2019. So I assume that's what that fee was for.
Yes, and I actually just looked it up myself. I confirmed it. I was able to access the work papers. That's exactly what it was for, the New York State EDC.
Thank you. And Bob, while I have you unmuted here, any other guidance for the committee before they vote on the motion to accept the audit report for 2019 with the adjustments so discussed?
No, other than this just an observation that I know that Randy, this is your first audit committee meeting, but this is from my experience. This is exactly the way audit committees should run. You asked appropriate questions to your auditor. The auditor gave an appropriate presentation of the audit. And, I want to thank the auditor for doing it in a timely fashion so that you can meet your ABO filing deadline of the 31st, assuming that the audit is approved at the board meeting. And, thank all the parties involved.
Thank you, Bob. Any other questions, comments before I call for the vote of the audit committee on the 2019 annual audit? Hearing none, I would ask by roll call vote, Ed Williams, for your vote.
Yes.
Randy Green, your vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, for Randy. Yes, for Randy. Jen, for Ed.
Yes.
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 Yes. For Randy. 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 Yes. For Ran and Matt Stoddard.
Yes.
So the three members of the audit committee each voted in favor of the audit, which leaves none to be opposed. That motion is carried. And then with respect to the Capital Resource Corporation letter, Jen or Bob, I don't know who's more appropriate to comment on that and what that entails related to our audit for that entity.
This is Jen. I'll just let me tell you, what we did, and then maybe Bob can chime in. Each year we had been advised, and it was again many years ago, I think when the year was established, that there was an annual audit requirement for the CRC, but there's never been any financial activity except for the initial year where we deposited a couple $100. So in lieu of, putting together an audit like this, with it for an entity that had no financial activity, we were able to write this letter basically just saying such, that it's still in place, there's no financial activity, we're just confirming that that's the case. So annually we put together that letter, we sketched it up. I believe there may be some additional filing requirements, which I'll defer to Bob on, but the letter is available and I think was mailed Friday, so it should be up there in the next couple of days. And if you need anything else from us on that end, please let us know.
Thank you, John, and I did circulate that letter. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, this is Bob. Thank you, Jen. Yes, beyond the letter, there is a report that's required to be filed with the ABO. Once everything is approved, hopefully at the board meeting tonight, we will get that filing completed before the 31st. Jen is absolutely correct in that the CRC, although created, has never had any activity, and the filing is relatively simple. It does require at the ABO site that there be an expense or a income and expense. You can't just enter in all zeros, it will reject it. So we've always put in that there was an income of $250 and an expense for salary for $250, and that clears it out. And so that would be the filing for this year as well.
And Bob, for background, I believe that corporation was formed for a potential project in town that never moved forward, at least with respect to this corporation.
Right, there is, and we touched on this a little bit at the board training on March 10th. The bonding authority for the IDA for certain projects expired in 2008. The CRC has been created by many IDAs around the state as a means of issuing bonds, not only for those facilities, but also for issuing bonds without incurring for the project the state bond issuance charge, which can be expensive for the project. Your CRC was created specifically for the one project. I think it was the Taylor project, or that may have been the name of the sponsor. It kind of predates my day-to-day involvement with the IDA, but it was a bio-waste project that was being proposed for the town. There's actually been several iterations of that project proposed in different areas of the state for almost 20 years, and that project has never really gotten off the drawing board stage. But you have the CRC available if certain projects come into the state, come into the town rather. It's advisable to keep the CRC going since you've already spent the legal fees and filing fees for creating it. And if, as and when a relevant project applies to the town for bond financing, the CRC is ready, is already there, can be used for that purpose.
Any questions for Bob on that from the committee? Bob, does the audit committee need to make a motion on this? And if so, what should that motion say?
The motion should be made to accept the audit report. And then the committee should make a motion to adjourn, and then you could start the regular board meeting.
So that would be the report of the CRC.
I'm sorry, yes, the report for the CRC.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Would anyone on the audit
This
committee?
is Matt, this is Matt Stoddard, I'll make that motion.
Is there a second to
Ed
that?
Williams, second.
We have a motion by Matt, second by Ed, to accept the Capital Resource Corporation report. Any other discussion on that report by the committee? Again, I'll ask for a roll call vote due to the conference call setting here. Ed Williams,
Yes.
Randy Green,
Yeah.
and Matt Stoddard.
Yes.
So just to summarize, all three members of the audit committee voted in favor of that report. That motion is carried. And unless there's any other business to come before the audit committee, suggest a motion to adjourn the committee meeting for this evening.
I make a motion, we adjourn. Ed Williams.
Thank you, Ed. Second to that motion.
I'll
second
second
that,
it.
Randy.
Randy's got it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. The committee meeting is adjourned. Thank you to those involved. And I would like to then go right into the opening of our Montgomery IDA board meeting for this evening, specifically to review the audit that has just been approved by the audit committee. Again, we're meeting by conference call and live video stream due to the circumstances around us. I'll call that meeting to order and open up the discussion on the 2019 Montgomery IDA audit, which I believe that, I know the full board was present by conference call to hear the discussion of the audit committee. Are there any other questions related to the audit report for Jen? And if you would like Jen to review any other aspects of that report, please state your name and let us know.
Yes, Jeff, this is Bob Santo.
Hi, Bob.
Jen? Hiya.
Hi.
Hiya. This might sound like a dumb question, but your firm is hired, just confirm this, is hired by the Montgomery IDA and paid for by the Montgomery IDA.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions related to the audit? And I might mention.
Hey Jeff, it's Bob.
Yes, go ahead, Bob.
Jeff, it's Bob. I'm sorry, because technically this is a new meeting. For the minutes of the board meeting, the special board meeting, there should be a brief statement from the audit committee about the presentation that Jen made and the results, recommendation of the audit committee to the board to approve or consider for approval the audit that she discussed.
And I would think that
I understand.
could be a pretty high level statement.
Absolutely.
Jen, you're on.
Okay, absolutely. All right, so just, briefly again, we audited the financial statement, the financial position of the town of Montgomery IGA for the year ended December 31st, 2019. We issued a unmodified or clean opinion, which is, the opinion you want to get. It's the A of the opinion world. We saw, a increase in the net position of the IDA this year, almost to the tune of $95,000, primarily because of, increased fees this year due to the increased number of projects. There were some, additional related expenses along the way. Nothing, again, out of the ordinary. And in looking at the balance sheet, there's some cash that, makes up most of the net position. There's a small amount for prepaid, and then there are some, limited liabilities, a small amount on accounts payable, some accrued expenses, and then an amount due to other governments, which we talked about in rather, great detail. That is an amount due for the mortgage tax recapture due back to Orange County. Other than that, the schedules are, again, just because they repeat a bit, they're pretty self-explanatory. And then I'll just note again on Schedule 7, where we identify for the various projects, what they would have paid at full assessed value, and then what they paid for their pilot arrangement. This is the first year that we've had full compliance from every project, in remitting to us some census data about the number of employees and that they anticipated, or jobs that they anticipated, creating or retaining, those that they did, and then any that have, happened subsequent to them becoming part of the IDA. So that was a really, really positive thing that happened this year. And again, I'd like to thank Jeff and Bob for assisting in that. Other than that, we just have some, the various notes about that, we kind of operate under one fund because the IDA doesn't have multiple funds, which is, considered the general fund. And then we have our, internal control letter where we identified a limited segregation of duties comment, and, we're going to incorporate management's response in our final issuance. So any additional questions, please feel free, or if you want any additional information, let me know.
Questions for Jen? Anything else? If not, I would suggest a motion to approve the annual audit as presented by the audit committee.
This is John Dixon, I make that motion.
Thank you, John. Motion by John. Second by Bob Santo. We have a motion and a second to accept the annual audit committee recommendation for our audit. Any other discussion or questions? Not.
Jeff, you should do this by roll call vote.
Sounds good, Bob. Ed Williams, how do you vote?
Yes.
Matt Stoddard?
Yes.
John Dixon?
Yes.
Randy Green?
Yes.
Bob Santo?
Yes.
Don Berger?
Yes.
And myself, I vote in favor. That's 7 in favor unless I missed anybody, and none opposed. Is that correct? Motion carried for the annual audit. And concerning the Capital Resource Corporation, is there a motion? Well, a quick review of that, please, Jennifer.
Certainly, yes. So again, when the Capital Resource Corporation was established many years ago, they had an annual filing requirement, or I think it was an audit requirement, but because there was, limited or no financial activity the last several years, we were advised that, like a simple letter, stating that fact, that basically, there was no financial activity for the year under review. And then, we signed that and set it up. And that's what we've been remitting to you guys for review and approval, and ultimately to New York State for filing. And then, Bob is going to do some additional filing work on his end, it sounds like, this year, to satisfy the additional requirement.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions from the board on
Sure.
the, yes? Who has a question? Maybe I heard a background noise. Any questions from the board on the Capital Resource Corporation letter and report? Hearing none, would anyone care to make a motion to accept that report?
This is John Dixon, I make that motion.
Thank you, John. Second to that motion?
Ed Williams, second.
Thank you, Ed. Any other discussion on the Capital Resource Corporation letter and report? Hearing none, I'll again ask for a roll call vote. Ed Williams,
Yes.
Matt Stoddard,
Yes.
John Dixon,
Yes.
Randy Green,
Yes.
Bob Santo,
Yes.
Don Berger,
Yes.
and myself, I vote in favor. That results in 7 in favor, none opposed, and that report is accepted. Bob, anything else we need to do tonight related to the audit before I ask Randy Green for a quick update on emails?
No, just for the board's information based on the approval tonight. I'm taking Schedule 7 from the audit report, unless Jen has anything to add. And we'll, over the next couple of days, submit the information to the ADO site. And I will send a notice to the chair when the filings for both the IDA and the CRC have been completed. If there's any questions that I have, I'll reach out to the chair or to Sue or Jen directly to you. But I think I have everything, and you will, the IDA and the CRC will have a filing done within the 90-day period, even though I think the ABO will probably extend that period in light of what's going on. But congratulations, this will be the first year in a long time that the IDA will have met the initial 90-day period.
Thank you, Bob. And on behalf of the board, thank you to Jen and Mark Levy from Nugent and Hausler for their attention over the last few months.
You didn't need me, I was here the whole time, but Jen did a great job.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Well, it is our pleasure, and I second Bob's congratulations. It's great to get this filed by March 31st. It's wonderful.
So the two of you
Thank
may,
you, Jen.
you're welcome. The two of you may
Thank you.
jump off the call if you like, and we'll continue on a very short agenda here. Yeah, have a good night.
Great. All right, well, thank you guys. Have a good night.
And if there's any questions, you can reach out to either one of us. Thank you. Have a good night.
Absolutely.
Thank you,
Take
Mark.
care. Good night. Bye.
Randy, a quick update on the emails and our effort to get dedicated Montgomery IDA emails for each board member.
Yes, I'm going to try to speak very slow because it's not my forte, but some of the watchers are commenting that we're talking too fast. So we do all have brand new emails for our IDA correspondence only. So from here on out, I'm going to explain to you briefly what your email address is, and then to make it less time consuming, I'm going to ask you to get my cell phone number from Jeff if you need me to walk you through it. It is a little bit cumbersome, the site that we have our emails through, only because it's different than we're used to as far as Gmail or Yahoo or any of the normal email servers. It's just different, but it's the most secure and encrypted email that we could get for the most valuable rate, I'll say. So it was the cheapest and most secure that we could get. So everyone's new email address will be their first initial, period, last name, at montgomeryida.com. And I will give the test password out because we're all going to have to go in and immediately change them. So everyone's password, until you go in and change it, hopefully immediately after this meeting, is lowercase test 1234. So currently there's no emails in there. So go in immediately and change your password. And then immediately after that, no other correspondence to or from anyone on this IDA board about IDA business should be through any other email except that email. So the website that's going to be the server that you log into your email is called Proton Mail. P like Peter, R like Robert, O, T like Tom, O, N like Nancy, mail.com. Everybody with me so far?
I think so.
Now, could you repeat that? I'm sorry. What was the last thing you just did? Proton, what was it?
Proton Mail is the server that we're going to use for our email. So you are going to
How did you spell it?
P, Peter, Robert, O, Thomas, O, Nancy, mail.
Gotcha, thank you.
And so you're just going to log in there, change your password, and then if you guys want to send a test email, and if anybody has any other issues with it, you can get my cell phone from Jeff. We also did a lot of updates on the website, so if everyone could take a look at that going forward for our next meeting and let me know what your feedback is on that to make it more user-friendly. And our email addresses are not going to be on the website. Only Jeff and Sue's will be on the website. And this is just for our correspondence. So it's not like you're going to get a barrage of emails from people. It's not on the website, it's just for us.
Thank you, Randy.
Hey, Randy, Donnie.
Yeah.
You said to go on the protonmail.com and change your email. Do you mean create your password?
I gave you your email. Everyone's email is the first letter of your first name.
Yeah, I got
Period. So your D period burger at montgomeryida.com. That's going to be your email address.
that. Right. I guess I misspoke. I'm talking about the password.
Password.
That is changing the password. Do you mean create the password?
No, Don. Be quiet. Everyone's password right now is the word test. TEST, all lowercase, 1234. So you're going to log in d.burger at montgomeryida.com. And your password is test1234.
Okay.
And you're going to go into your account settings and change your password immediately.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay?
Any other questions? I would suggest we do that offline. There's a subsequent meeting due to start in about 2 minutes here at Town Hall. So unless there's any other urgent business, I would ask for a motion to adjourn.
This is John Dixon, I make that motion.
Thank you, John. Second to that
Don
motion.
Berger, I second it.
Don Berger seconds. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, the same? Thank you, Bob, for being on. Thank you, everybody, for being here this evening. Have a good night and stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
See you.
Good night.
Bye.
Hopefully we can meet in person next time.
Yeah, that would be nice.
We're out. What'd you think?